friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I am the host of the show. And today, you guys, we're on episode 171, Being Real About Botox with Never Tox and Terry Fox. Yeah, that's right. That's a title that I am so proud of. I cannot wait, not only for this episode, but do I get points for dopest title of an episode ever? Because I'm pretty sure that should be a book. We're probably going to turn this into a book now. Just kidding. Anyways, guys, I'm so excited to have two returning guests come back on, Gretch from Never Tox and Terry Fox, to talk about Botox. Now, before we get into this episode, I just want to preface, if you don't want the truth about Botox, probably don't listen, or maybe you should listen. But also, I just really want those that are listening to know that I'm not coming at this in a way where I am shaming or judging or hating on any individual that does this service, uses this service, promotes this service, because I generally do not think that anybody is doing anything but what they think is right, and that's helping others and making them feel beautiful and loved and seen and fantastic. And I'm not saying that those things don't do that for some people. However, you guys know me. You know the real talk that I like to have, and you know that I don't love when people don't have informed consent. And one of the biggest industries and services that I see where people do not have informed consent is Botox. It is so normalized in this day and age that you cannot say anything without losing friends, followers, kind of respect from people around you just because you're speaking out about it. And one thing that I really kind of want to just share a little bit quickly here, one thing that I struggle with is that I'll have support for calling out something that someone really hates, and I will have full support for that. But the minute I start speaking out about something that they love, they use, maybe they make their money off of, their opinions all of a sudden change and they no longer want me to speak truth about that. I just think that that's so unfair to me, and it really is something that I just want to point out to individuals, that if you love my advocacy for things that you are against, please have the respect for the advocacy for those of the things that you do like. Because when you tell me I can't speak about that, or you react poorly to me, you're kind of telling the people that have been harmed by that their experience is not as important as your enjoyment of what that is. I see this time and time again in people online that shame those that are injured with Botox, that get it, that don't get it. It's not the right place to be shaming people, okay? If you love it and you have not been hurt, just like I say with breast implants, then that's amazing, and I'm so happy for you. The last thing I want is to see more people hurt. At the same time, just because some people are not getting hurt doesn't mean that others aren't. And that doesn't mean that over time it's not going to happen to you either. And if it does, I want you to remember this episode and this moment and not have to sit in gaslit, nothing's wrong with you world that a lot of these women and some men have suffered at the hands of Botox injectors, okay? So if you don't want to know the truth and you want to keep injecting your face and you are completely fine and you feel you are informed, that is your right, and I respect you and love you, and I've worked very hard to understand that that has nothing to do with me, and that you don't think I'm less beautiful because I don't get it, which is a huge thing in itself. I just want you to be informed, and I want you to know. And so if you know anybody that is not informed and they're getting Botox, please send them this episode. Send them to Terry, send them to Gretch, send them to Never Tox and all the information that are there. These are honest to goodness people that are boots on the ground dealing with those, that have dealt with this, injuries or trying to find natural ways of doing it. But anyways, guys, this is a very exciting episode. I'm so excited to be coming and swinging for the first month of season 7. I hope you guys have been enjoying my solo season with all the guests that we've had so far. It's been electric for myself. I'm going to apologize that the sunshine came into this episode, so my coloring is absolutely whack. Normally I'm recording at nighttime and it looks so much different now and the sun is beaming in. So I'll have to fix this for the studio. But apologies for looking so washed out, but also very excited to go enjoy some sunshine because the winter depression is real, y'all. I feel that sad just lifting off my body as the sun was rising this morning. So if you are listening though on YouTube or Rumble, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. As well, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you can turn on notifications there as well and give us a review. Thank you to all that have. I see all those 5 stars and it literally just warms my heart every time. So if you have a second now on any of the platforms, if you want to go leave us a review, that's awesome. It helps get our I keep saying R. It's going to take forever for me not to say R, you guys. It's been 7 seasons of R, so it helps me get myself and my show out there. And if you are looking for us on Instagram or Pinterest, we are still at the Be Real Babe. I am still at the Be Real Babe podcast on Instagram and Pinterest, but you will find us at you will find me at Be Real Babe Collective on Facebook because the original Be Real Babe podcast got taken over in my hack that you guys learned about in the first episode of the season. So, anyways, without further ado, let's get into this absolutely fire episode with these amazing guests. One thing about the sun that I love it, but it's like it heats this like heat dome in here and I get anxious when I do this anyway. So it's just like sweating through every pore. Okay, let's try this again. Red dot, red dot, red dot. Okay, I'm not touching fucking thing this time. Okay. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today in studio, I have 2 very special returning guests. I'd like to welcome Gretch from Never Tox and Terry Fox back to the show. Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for
Good to
having
be
us.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm so excited. Now you both have been on the show once, and now I get to have you both back together. I'm so excited, you guys. If you guys don't know, these guys have been on the episodes before, and I'm going to shout out to episode 49, Gretch's first episode, and then episode 158 with Terry Fox. So make sure you guys go back and listen to those episodes, but let's just pretend this is our first time meeting. Gretch, can you give us a little intro, and then we'll follow up with Terry?
Yes. Okay. So I'm Gretch Elizabeth, and I'm a former high school science teacher. And I fell down the rabbit hole of botulinum toxin research. And I've been doing this for nearly a decade. And this was after my sister acquired iatrogenic botulism poisoning. And that has led me into my current work, which is I work as a patient advocate for people who have been harmed by Botox. And so I help facilitate an online support group where people can go and get the support that they need. And we have 30,000 sufferers there now, which is incredible because when I first stumbled upon that group many years ago, there was 1,000 people. So we've grown all the way to that point, which is just incredible. And then alongside of that, I work on the awareness piece of things to try and get the informed consent piece out to people, to try to help people understand what can happen to them should they use botulinum toxin. And then also, as of last June, we also launched our coalition, Tox Safety, which is sort of the umbrella coalition that everything else falls under. So that's kind of what we're using to drive more of the education part of things.
Love it. Every time I just watch you just soar, it blows my mind. Just never ending, girl. I love it. Okay, Terry, you're up next.
I'm Terry Fox, and I'm a Gretch groupie.
Yes, groupie
I
Gretch.
love everything
Long
Never
time
Tox
groupie.
is
I'm a
doing.
groupie for him too.
I'm a licensed acupuncturist, traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. My specialty is aesthetic and facial acupuncture. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of Never Tox. Because I provide that alternative that doesn't use any sort of botulinum toxin. It helps your body rejuvenate itself. And I love this work that I'm doing. It's holistic, it's natural, it works with your body instead of against your body, and it's just an all around beautiful thing.
I love it. Can I say I'm groupies of both of you? Is that acceptable?
Yes.
But honestly, guys, I must say that the reason why I wanted to have you both on here is because not only do you speak honest truth about how you feel and you're not worried about I don't say offending because that's not the right word, but you just care more about getting it out there and having people have informed consent and also offering an alternative. So having you both on from a patient care point of view and a patient advocacy point of view with these alternatives. And I know, Gretch, you're a fan of Frownies as well, and you do work with other modalities outside of the ones that Terry you provide as well, because and I want to open the conversation of letting other people know there's other ways. And even if you want to continue still doing Botox, I'm just very much for you to be informed of what that means, because I'm sure, like both of you, it's painful to hear these women go through that. And like you said, Gretch, in a couple years, that group went up 30,000 people. The best way to prevent that growth from that is awareness and speaking out about it. So thank you both very much for being real and honest, even if it's not the popular opinion. And it kills me, Gretch, when I see these horrible trolls come at you, when I know deep in your heart, like, you are literally just trying to prevent what happened to your sister to all of the other women, because you see them as sisters as well. And I get so freaking mad, and I'm just like, you're not going to waste 6 hours arguing all these trolls, but like deep down in my heart, instead, I'll go to my story and I'll share how I think that you're inspirational and get these things out. So truly, guys, like both of you, thank you. I know you guys are always sharing this. So first and foremost, Terry, thanks for offering and doing this. And I know we spoke in the last episode that it started because you wanted to help your mom, which is beautiful. We talked, we both, our moms have fibromyalgia. So we have that in common growing up. And I think that's what draws me to both of you, is just like your big hearts and wanting to help others because you've experienced that with your family members. So I relate that. And I just, yeah, thank you. And then Gretch for fighting the trolls daily, because this is a controversial topic for some reason, which
It is.
I get it, but I don't get it. So let's just start from the beginning. Let's pretend we never talked about Botox. I'm going to lean heavily more on Gretch at the beginning here with the sciencey back. Not that you don't, Terry, but I want to speak to you more about like what you're seeing as
Yeah.
a patient provider. So Gretch, let's just start with, we know what Botox is, but what is Botox?
Okay, yeah, let's go to the very basics. And I
Yeah.
actually wrote out an even better explanation of it than I have given live on anything else. So I'm going to be following my notes a little bit here too, because I want to make sure that listeners really, really understand exactly what Botox is. Okay, so first of all, Botox. This is short for botulinum toxin or botulinum toxin A, and it has been used therapeutically since 1989. The first indications were for blepharospasm or abnormal blinking of the eye. And then in 2002, we saw approvals come in for facial lines or facial wrinkles, specifically in the forehead region. And so botulinum toxin A is, in fact, by definition, the exact neurotoxic protein that is responsible for causing human botulism. And so it is derived from a bacteria. It starts as a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum. And then from there, under the perfect conditions, so we're combining time, being without air and heat, that bacteria actually grows a neurotoxin and secretes that neurotoxin. And once that neurotoxin grows, it consumes the bacteria. And what we have left now is a combination of the neurotoxic protein and some of the non toxic proteins that are left over. But it is primarily now just botulinum toxin A. And so, what I want to be sure to tell people is that the structure, okay, of botulinum toxin, the way that it's made up. And so, people oftentimes hear providers say, yes, but they say, yes, but it is non-toxic. The thing is that no, no, no. It is very, very highly toxic. And by definition, botulinum toxin A is the world's most lethal neurotoxin. Yes, it is made up of some non-toxic proteins, but those proteins in the product do not play a role in what the product is doing. So we have several different types of botulinum toxin A. Several different types of botulinum toxin, excuse me. We have the A, we have B, C1, C2, D, E, F, and sometimes G. And all of these different serotypes are responsible for causing disease in an organism. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about how, although all of those different types are similar, they attach differently or they do a little bit different thing in the body. And so, botulinum toxin A, as I said, it is responsible for causing human botulism. And the way that works is that this toxin goes in and it infiltrates the cells or it causes paralysis. And so there's this misunderstanding out there in our world that Botox is just relaxing the muscles, but that is not exactly what it's doing. What it's actually doing is it is causing paralysis. And I know that Terry on another episode with you talked exactly about that too. And it's true. That is what it's doing. And so I just want people to know that this is so much more than what they're being told. So, clinically speaking, the reason why botulinum toxin A was chosen, okay, for Botox instead of one of the other types is because of its longer duration. So, it has a long duration where it causes this chemical blockade in the nerves, right? So, it is chemically denervating the nerves to prevent the release of acetylcholine. And so I have this picture in my mind, and I've stared at this diagram over the last 10 years many, many times. And I want to explain this to people because this is the part that people don't understand. So imagine you have your nerve, right? And your nerve is sort of shaped like a teardrop. We have the botulinum toxin come in, and it's comprised of two chains. It has a heavy chain, it's a very large protein, and it has a heavy chain and a light chain. That heavy chain goes in and it attaches to the receptor, and then the light chain breaks off and it transports to the end of the cholinergic nerve where it prevents, okay, that acetylcholine from being able to do its job or to perform its function. That mechanism there of the toxin is irreversible. It does not go away. It is irreversible. So, when a person's movement comes back to their muscles, this is not because, oh, the botulinum toxin's biological activity has worn off or it has left the body, it's trotted out just as quickly as it trotted in. That's not what's happening. What happened is that our bodies are amazing in their ability to regenerate. And so the nerves actually come in and they sprout alongside of the intoxicated nerves. And those new baby nerves then can release acetylcholine properly because they're not intoxicated by the toxin. Problem is that sometimes those nerves can't or won't grow in healthy, so they're not healthy either. And that's when we see some of these, which we'll get into, adverse events and muscle atrophy and things happen that people don't want to occur.
That's wild. So, Terry, do you see that in your practice? Like, are you able to tell if someone's had Botox kind of just based on like the feeling? Is that something that you feel or see in your practice?
With the Chinese medicine face reading that I've been taught, a lot of times, yeah, I can see whether or not someone's been treated. Um, but it's honestly not that hard for most of us to figure out, especially when you can't raise your eyebrows or you know
You can't frown
create
fully.
any
Yeah.
of these lines.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
So,
But some people are so
I wish I could say I had
sensitive, right?
some special insight into this, but honestly, it's
Okay.
it's pretty obvious when you're looking for it.
Mhm.
It all kind of depends on how much they're actually injecting. I mean, they're starting to use now what they call baby Botox
Yep.
that is a little bit less and it's more on the surface, so that gets a little more subtle than what we're used to seeing. But yeah, it's something that one can certainly pick up on.
Yeah, definitely. That's so wild. Thank you, Gretch, for that explanation. It's like I think a lot of people they think about Botox and they think about the societal version of it, and the glamorized version of it and the like Hollywood version of it. And they don't think about Botox at its like scientific level. That's why I like to have you come on and be like, there's it's not just, like, oh, it's not just like putting lipstick on. To me, this is a major thing to be putting into your body personally. I think
Mhm.
it's insane to me that there's baby quote unquote preventative Botox. That's a whole big thing because then it's telling women even younger that they should be doing this,
Yep.
which really upsets me because we don't really know what that's going to look like. I think, Gretch, we're around the same age. At our age, like I feel like it was most like women in their 60s or 70s that were super rich
It
that were
was,
doing
yes.
that. It wasn't 20-year-olds that are immediately get one line because they're in school all day or on their phones and they're immediately like, oh, I got to get baby Botox. What is that going to look like of 20, 30, 40 years of that use? Like we have no idea even now what that's going to look like. It's kind of a little bit terrifying to me. So speaking of, so we use that one toxin for Botox, and is that through all of them? Like, are there safe
Yeah,
Botoxes to get?
let's
Do they have less or more?
That's a really good question. Let's talk about the different commercial Botox products.
Yeah.
So, on the market right now, we have the first one, which is Botox, which is botulinum toxin A. That's the first. And the second is botulinum toxin A, which is Dysport. Then we have our third, which is botulinum toxin A, which is Xeomin, which I'm going to circle back around to that in a second.
Mhm.
And then we have botulinum toxin A, which is Jeuveau. And then we have the newest commercial one, which is the I have it written down here. Oh yeah, Daxi botulinum toxin. And Daxi is a little bit different. It has an added peptide ingredient. It's said to be longer lasting. It's really new. We are seeing injuries coming in from it, but it's relatively new. It's not as highly studied, and so unfortunately, I don't have as much information on that. I'm very skeptical of this protein and
Always.
this longer duration and exactly what the different mechanisms are of that. I'm certainly concerned. And then there is one other one that's on the market, which is botulinum toxin, and that is actually botulinum toxin B. So that is a little bit different serotype. And so again, like back at the beginning, I talked about its intracellular mechanism. It's attaching to the nerve a little bit differently, but its purpose and what it's doing is still causing paralysis in the same way. So, but to circle back around to Xeomin, you asked if any of them are safer. So you will hear people market Xeomin as being the naked toxin. And so again, to go back to how this toxin is made up, we have the neurotoxic protein with its 150 kDa molecular weight. And then we have the other side, which is the non-toxic proteins, which make up in each of those different products a different number, right? So 600, 200, 300. But in Xeomin, it's 0. So this is engineered to remove those non-toxic proteins. And the way that they're marketing this is they say, oh, because of the absence of these proteins, they're saying that it's cleaner or that it's safer, not really explaining what clean and safe mean. And so in the marketing world, people have taken that to mean that clean and safe means that, that clean means that it's healthy or
Yeah.
safer in some way, when that actually couldn't be further from the truth. And these marketing professionals are really smart in how they've done this by pairing themselves with known celebrities who preach green living, who have that lifestyle, and saying that they endorse their product. And it's unfortunate to me, because what it means actually, if we look at the product itself, is we've taken out those complexing proteins or those non-toxic proteins. All we have left now is just the neurotoxic protein. And so
Yeah.
dose for dose, a person is actually getting a little bit more. We could say that it might even be a little bit stronger, and there are studies showing that to be the case. So the whole Xeomin thing is really frustrating to me as a researcher, because all of the information is right there in black and white, and yet people are so quick to latch onto these narratives and then think that they're going to be in the clear because they got Xeomin instead of one of the others. Here's one thing that always makes me chuckle, though, and I have to say it. Everybody can go on their website and look at the fine print underneath the photo of whoever is endorsing it at that time. And you will see with your own little bitty eye, really down small in the print below it, it will say, studies have not been completed to show whether the presence or absence of complexing and accessory proteins has any benefit on safety or efficacy. It's written right there. The only time that those proteins would play a role is in naturally occurring botulism, when a person, if they were to eat it, if they were to consume this protein, from a bad canned good or something,
Yeah.
those non-toxic proteins proteins might protect it in the gut. And that is just a big might. And they maybe will play a role in antibody formation, but we know that antibodies happen in less than 1% of people to this toxin. So that really isn't it either.
So it's like a greenwashing essentially of
That's
Botox
exactly
by
what it is. Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
greenwashing.
Yeah, and I notice a lot of people do that. It's a definite, it makes me sad because it's great that people want to take a more natural, holistic approach to things, you know? Like why is that such a we've talked about this many times. We all talk about this like why is that such a bad thing? I know why, but and so they use these like marketing tools to make it sound like and you hear that with breast implants too. Well, I got these because they're better or they're healthier or they're safer for you. And
Mhm.
I just like to challenge back and say any alteration you're doing to that body, and I'm speaking tattoos, like I'm no, I got my things, but anything that you're doing in a body modification or if you're eating even, like you put yourself at risk, and it's just the truth. And to unfortunately, they're going to use people's insecurities and their fear to market and to get what they want. So it's like, oh, well, it makes them look like they're the better ones because they're, caring about their patients, but it's like, but you're not. And then it comes around to responsibility. It's like, well, we told you, it's right on our website. And I
Yeah.
just find that so fucking sneaky. I absolutely hate it. It's this thing I feel like influencers do it where they're selling stuff. And at the very bottom, it's like, oh, yeah, I make some money off of this. So you know that it's like complete trash, right?
Yep.
It makes me absolutely sad. So yeah, you guys, there is no good one, in my opinion. Like you're putting yourself at risk regardless if it's a lot once a couple times a year. So let's get into the risks then.
Mhm.
I know there's a plethora of them and we're still developing, but what are some of the side effects? Let's start with you, Gretch, that you see, and then Terry, I'd like your as input after as well from Gretch of what you see as a patient practitioner.
Okay, so there's a lot of side effects, more than anyone should count. And I've counted them because this is what I do. There's over 400 listed in our regulating body, so on the FAERS database, FDA. And that site, although really helpful, could be a lot better. Like, for instance, we could number the side effects so that I don't have to count them. Like, it's a little frustrating in just how it's set up, and it's all in these big lines, and you can categorize it by body system, which is kind of cool. So you can, say I want to look at all the adverse events for the circulatory system, and then click on that, and it will list them there, or so on and so forth. But let's talk about what we're seeing mostly in people. So there was an excellent study that came out by David Zagarin, which is the largest international post-botulinum toxin survey of its kind that came out last year. We helped facilitate that, our group. So 605 participants were involved in that, and they were surveyed on their botulinum toxin experiences. And the number one side effects that were coming back were pain, anxiety, panic attacks, headache, migraine, depression, brain fog, tinnitus, and secondary conditions that were sparked by using the toxin. So that looks like a couple of things like MCAS, which I know a lot of people, that's kind of a buzzword right now, dysautonomia. So whether that manifests in like a POTS syndrome or it reactivating viral illnesses or bacterial illnesses in the body or sparking autoimmune conditions. So those are kind of the popular things that we're seeing in that survey. But as far as our group members go, usually our group members come into the group because they experience something more catastrophic. So like my sister, where on the fifth day, she was struck with the symptoms that could not be ignored. And so we see people having drooping eyes or tunnel vision, neck instability where they can't hold up their heads. They have symptoms or signs of maybe having a heart attack or a stroke. One side of their body might go, numb, or they might have facial paralysis or drooping eyelids or drooping cheek, these kinds of things. And these fall under more the acute stage of poisoning or what are more botulism like adverse events.
That's crazy. And Terry, for yourself as a practitioner, do you have people that come in with injuries from that to
You
see
know,
you?
I can't say that I've had anybody come in who has officially said, "Yep, I've been injured." But I live in a very small town, and so we don't necessarily have quite that many people. That being said, uh, when you talk about these side effects, Gretch, a lot
You
of
suspect.
women, I
Yeah.
think, that receive Botox can get these symptoms,
Yep.
and then it's shoved off as well. You have this autoimmune disease. We don't know where it came from,
Yes.
and they won't connect the dots. between, yeah, you had Botox done just 2 weeks ago, and now all of a
Right.
sudden these are showing up for you. So it wouldn't surprise me if I have actually had someone come in who has had autoimmune disease issues and has had Botox but hasn't necessarily disclosed it to me. Certainly a possibility.
That's very
But
funny.
yeah, these symptoms, it just amazes me how prevalent they can be. And then we can talk about, the side effects for, interpersonal communication,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
how if your facial muscles aren't firing, how that can affect you emotionally and how you receive and interpret uh, messages from other people, and then how you communicate to other people as well. And it messes up that whole non-verbal component of human communication. And
Mhm.
that creates issues.
That's a huge risk too that I don't think people really think about. And I think it might have been in our last episode that we talked about it, Terry, where it was kind of like what there's a lot of children when they're developing, they use a lot of cues and their social cues from their
Mhm.
parents' faces. And so when those are frozen or whatever, not frozen, but for lack of a better word, and they're not as expressive, then kids have a hard time learning, social cues and understanding like a frown and all that because we're so afraid to frown. No one wants to frown, but
Yes.
have you ever worked with Excel? There's lots of reasons to frown.
Yes.
um, and it just makes me really sad too, when you hear that about studies now about like, let's say masks where they're missing half their faces. So if you think about it, it makes sense when you're missing this part of your face or you're changing it, like what is that communicating to the babies and stuff like that. And they get to moms so quickly after they have kids of all the ways that your body should be. And I feel like this is also another place where, they get onto and then you don't realize that you're robbing your child of that expressive face. And then what are they learning socially, right? And that's a huge risk, I think, that I would never thought of until someone else brought it up to me.
Yeah, Terry, I love that you brought that up. That's so important. And that is exactly what we're seeing as well in our group members. And so we do have a portion of group members that come into the group because they're just simply using the toxin and they haven't experienced necessarily this really big health crisis from it. But what I like that you said is that, you said, well, maybe I've seen people with this. Of course you have. I think you have,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
oftentimes what this toxin does to somebody's body or to the organism is that it poisons them slowly. And so people can't really connect the dots looking forward. But once they learn this information and they see these side effects on paper, or they meet others who are having them, they start connecting the dots looking back. They think
Yeah.
back, oh, I had this. Oh, I had that. Oh, that wasn't normal that one time this happened to me, or whatever it is. And they start to see that all along the way, over the course of months to years that they were using this product, their body was giving them clear signs that something wasn't right. And so that is definitely something that's happening. This catastrophic health crisis isn't the case for every single person. We have people who have used the toxin pretty successfully for a period of 10 years or more before it all went south. And this is
Mhm.
reflected in studies as well, which I can go over later. But there is a summative action to the use of this neurotoxin.
And that's something that I noticed being in the group. I have to get back in now because my old Facebook was hacked, so I have to jump back in.
Oh, shoot.
But that was something I know that's the worst part. Is one thing I noticed is that when it came to um, people's stories, it's ranged from it happened within minutes, like,
Mhm.
right away, to 10 years,
Yep.
to I had a lot and I've been doing it forever, or I've had just a little bit. Like, it really has, each individual's story really seems to be unique. And I think that it's really important to make sure that everyone's sharing their stories because I agree with you, Gretch. I think, Terry, you probably have seen more people, or we probably have friends or family that we know that are undiagnosable. Like, does the world really have this much anxiety, or is it like, a side effect of so much Botox? Like, and what are we going to get to the point where it's like with breast implant illness, where it's like, it's not a matter of like, if you get cancer, it's kind of like when you get, is that what we're going to be seeing with this Botox? Because like, that would be great to get into the studies, Gretch, because I imagine
Mhm.
over the last decade, more and more studies have come out. But at the same time, I feel like it's with like breast implant illness where they start these studies, but they never really finish it to really get a true conclusive answer to then, so it's like, oh, it doesn't exist, but it's like, well, it doesn't exist because you didn't finish it. It doesn't mean that doesn't exist. So like, what are we seeing when it comes to Botox illness kind of research?
We're seeing a lot. And as far as Botox illness goes and the research behind that in the current, it's very difficult. And I'll tell you why it's difficult. It's difficult because right now we don't have any readily available tests to give somebody or to give a person to say, oh, yep, here's the botulism, you have botulism. So I can't just go to EMR and say, I had Botox, this happened to me, do I have botulism? It is diagnosed only on the clinical symptoms that are presented. Now, that's not to say that there aren't tests. There are tests. It's just not that they're readily available. There's a blood draw that can be done, but it has to be done within the first 48 hours. Then they're going to take it to some lab in Poland, and then they're going to do a mouse bioassay, which is where they take that blood, they put it into the mouse, and they see if the mouse dies, right? This is just not something that our country is doing. It's very expensive. It's not available. With naturally occurring botulism, there's stool testing that can be done on babies and things. However, it's different when it's an injectable product, because when you consume this product, when you eat it, the amount that a person is taking is so much greater, and it goes through the whole digestion system, and then it can be found in the stool. Whereas with Botox, it's being administered intramuscularly, and so it's totally different, and the amounts are so small, it just doesn't make its way to that area. It just doesn't really work that way. And that's why a blood test doesn't work as well, just testing someone's blood from the beginning. So the
That's
research with
convenient.
that, it's really, really tough. So what you actually have to do if you want to learn the truth about this toxin is you have to look at the animal model studies. You have to go older. This toxin has been being studied since the 1800s, okay? And in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, world-renowned researchers were studying botulinum toxin because they had this idea that maybe this could be used therapeutically. And they were right. And then, of course, I think Terry mentioned this in the past, that it was also studied to be used as a biological war agent. And that is actually why the protein was isolated for use in the first place. And so you got to go back to those early studies to see its mechanisms of action, of what it's doing in reptilians, for example, what it's doing in guinea pigs and mice and monkeys and all of these different mammal groups, to understand then what is happening in humans. And the writing is on the wall. The truths are all there. And so for me as a researcher, that's been the most interesting piece of this, is when I get an older study. Okay, I am paired with a lot of people, in different countries everywhere. And we kind of have this network going where people will find something, they'll get their hands on it, and then somehow it gets to me. And nothing makes me happier than when I get, like, I have a frog study right now. We keep laughing. Oh, you have the frog study, because it proved some really important things that are happening in the muscle tissue after the toxin is administered, like within that first 12 hours. So, we had suspected this to be happening in people. We'd seen evidence of this happening, but I didn't have anything on paper until the frog study came. So that's just kind of how it's working.
That's nuts. And so let's just pretend we haven't talked about this before. Botox has a black box warning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Terry, can you explain to me what that means?
That black box warning, this is like the most strict warning that the FDA can put on a product. And literally, I mean, to simplify it, it means the product can kill you. It's
Exactly.
it's that simple.
And maybe just because I'm from Canada, how do we have a product that's FDA approved that can lead to that? Like, do you guys know when a product like has harmed enough people it could be pulled? Like, I just find it wild that anything can be like, maybe I guess everything could potentially, too much of everything could lead to death, but how do we have something that's not, let's say, saving individuals? Like, for the most part, I know people talk about the medical Botox and how it helps them with headaches, and okay, I'll leave that. If you know the risk and that's helping you, okay. But outside of that, for, let's say, vanity purposes, how do we allow something on the market that could kill you? I'm missing something.
And I feel like I'm missing something too, because that is the question that keeps me up all night long. Is I'm trying to understand that myself, because when you go back and you look at the trials, right, the trials are primarily designed to test efficacy, not safety. And for example, in the original botulinum toxin trials for cosmetic use, with the monitoring of adverse events, this was done on a more of a passive monitoring system. And what that means is that the patients would on a voluntary basis report, their adverse events. They weren't required to. And then, of course, you look at the study designs and how they were made in the first place, or how they were modeled. And a lot of the, you have to look at why people were excluded from the trials. So there's a lot of trail there where people joined the trials, and for whatever reason, if they experienced a side effect, let's say in the first week, that person is then removed from the trial. So there's all of these things from just the design of those in the first place that we have to ask ourselves, was that done in an ethical manner? And when those trials are done by the manufacturers who have a vested interest in this product going to market in the first place, it's kind of like, I don't know here. So it, our
And that
system is
bothers
not
me the
perfect.
most. Yeah, and I think that's what bugs me the most is I try not to be this way, but practitioners that are just not, maybe they're not informed on purpose, by accident. I don't want to think that people go out there causing harm, but I also think it's super irresponsible to offer a product and not be vocal about it. And I know that a lot of the individuals that you have to argue with, Gretch, in your comment section are usually injectors,
Yep.
that act as if you have no sort of understanding of the science behind it. Like, it just kind of
Yep.
kills me when I see someone go, I'm like, do you know who you're talking to? Like, she's just not like it. This isn't just like, yes, it happened to your sister for sure, and that lit your fire, but you actually have a background in science
Yep.
too. It's not like you're reading this stuff and like me and just like guessing, like I try my best, but I'll say I'm no professional. This is what I think. You actually have stuff to back it up. You actually have experience. And so it just blows my mind when people come at you and argue you with those kind of things. Cause I'm like, but she literally, that's her life. She's a researcher, she's a science teacher, her sister got it. Like, what more do you need to be an expert at something? I feel like you kind of have a whole round, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And it blows
and
my mind.
it gets frustrating for me, and it's okay, because I tell
Yeah.
you, those comments and those people, the industry professionals, it is actually what keeps me being a better researcher. And so there's something that's occurring in the industry right now, which is really frustrating. And I'm out there in other groups, not just our group, seeing these comments that they put in come in. And then, of course, I'm scrambling to go and show them, hey, you're wrong, because I have thousands of studies of this toxin on my computer, and I can pretty much, if once I find it, I can show them how and why they're wrong. So they'll make these blanket statements or these absolute statements, and nothing makes me more frustrated than when a medical provider that has all the letters behind their names waltzes in and say Botox is metabolized from the body within 3 days. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, it's not. That's a really good effort. But here, let me tell you why it's not. And so these are the kinds of things that happen in those comment sections. They come and they parrot. I know that's not a nice word, but I'm beyond being nice now at this
Oh,
point. I'm
I
not as
love
nice as I was in the past. They parrot the industry narratives that really, at the end of the day, are designed to turn a profit. And they don't
yes.
know why they're saying those things. They were just told those things from the manufacturer or for someone that they looked up to higher above them, right?
Yeah.
Without knowing that the studies are not actually showing that to be true.
This
Yeah.
is where you
Yeah.
kind of get into human nature, and that most of these injectors are nurses,
Yeah.
physicians assistants. They are here to serve people, and so
Yes,
they do have a heart for service. They do want people getting better. Um,
Absolutely.
at the same time, when you're doing this kind of work, you also want to justify what you're doing.
yes,
And so if I'm an injector and I've got a heart for people and I think this is really helping, then I am going to do my best to fight for this product. And it's also making me money. So,
This is two. It looks like two
but
positives, right? You're helping people have their, boost their confidence and get their self esteem, or what they think will. Maybe it won't. That's up to each individual. And like you said, they come from compassion. If they're becoming nurses or service providers, mostly women. That's that nurturing. And you think this is wrong. Well, I've got something, and I'm told that it's safe. And I think a lot of people go through their medical awakening in that kind of system, and sees that sometimes like things are out there, they say they're safe, but that doesn't always mean it. Like myself was with birth control, right? Where it's like maybe it was safe and effective for a lot of other people, but that is not my experience, even
mhm,
though it was and now I have to live with not being able to have a baby, maybe because of that, and I'm going to share that. Does that mean that happens to everybody? No. And the nurse that gave that to me at 16, I'm sure she just thought she was trying to help me get rid of my acne
Yep.
and to protect me from having a baby, because birth control is safe. And it's just, like I said, that's the narrative that they're told either from the manufacturer or from school. And whether that's right, wrong, or the other, sometimes nobody looks into it, or they look around and be like, oh, I see all these people sick, but I know that's not the same thing. So, there's no studies, because you're so, I think, trained to like, oh, if there's not a study or there's no proof, then it's not fact. And it's just wishy-washy. These women are crazy. I see that all the time, that
Yep.
women in that group will say, I'm told that I'm crazy. And, my injector said that that's not true. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not saying that they're bad people, but everyone's got to make money. So you just have to be truly, so if it's an injector that's like, hey, just let you know, this got a black box warning. These are things that could happen. If this happens, please reach out to me. Like, if there was more of that, I think I would be more on board with this. But 90% of the time when I'm hearing and reading is that that's not happening. And in fact, the opposite is happening.
Yep.
Same with breast implants. Like, well, you can run over them with the truck. Well, gosh darn it. I always wanted to lie down with my breast implants and get ran over. So I'm really glad that that scenario can happen. Like, but in your mind, you're like, shit, those sound so fucking safe if you can drive over them. But that's like, okay, but are they safe at this? They're supposed to be at room temperature. You put those in the body. Core temperature is not room temperature. I think. I'm not a scientist, but I think that's fair to say. What happens when you heat up plastic, y'all? Like, sometimes it doesn't take a science degree to kind of put pieces together and see, okay, well, there's women sick, and plastic usually makes us sick. So, hmm.
Well, what you're describing is this ability to really critically think about things. And I grew up with my dad was a biologist. I tell this to everybody. He was brilliant, right? A doctor of biology. There was something he said to me as a child that I'll never forget. And he's like, Gretchen, your ability to understand the world is this. You have to actually see with your ears and hear with your eyes. When you have that ability, you will learn to understand things on the level of which you need to. And he's right. What that means is that you have to take the information that we have, you have to take it deeper. You have to critically think about it. You have to connect the dots. It's not as easy as people want to make everything, right? You actually have to do some work to see what's really happening here.
Yeah, and what you're being sold. And everyone
Yep.
can have the best intentions. I truly, and to your point, Tara, I'm glad that you brought that up. That I don't
Yes.
necessarily, like I said, I think this is necessarily nefarious. The ones that are in your comment section, those ones can go suck a big toe. But the ones that truly are just really trying to help people, just trying to not get kicked off YouTube this season. And like that truly want to help, like I feel for them, and that must suck. But at the same time, it's just like, please, everyone, once you learn about it, please try to do better and just inform your patients. Like, do what you want. People are still going to do it. Like, I'm the
Yep.
same way. I drink energy drinks, and I know that is pure garbage. I know that's pure toxic crap, but that's my vice. And I have it. I have tattoos. I never thought about the ink when I got tattooed. I just wanted them and I went and got them. Now I'm like, if I do that, I've been really trying to be more intentional, and it's all because of awareness. And I just am terrified of needles, and I'm terrified of anything in my body. I'm kind of one of those crunchy cat moms, because I'm not a real mom, cat mom now, where I'm just like terrified of everything. And the thought of putting that in my body scares me. But I'm also an addict. That is my core. And I know that Botox is very addicting to a lot of people. And
Mhm.
if you don't see repercussions, you're going to keep doing it. And that's for me, it's like I can't even do it once, because if I do it once, I know I'm going to be a return person for the rest of my life. So, can we get into the natural alternatives to
Mhm.
Botox? So, Terry, this is up your lane. So, can you explain a little bit more? I know we had your whole episode, but just kind of high level about the acupuncture. I really liked your analysis of like how things move in the body and energy wise. Can you give us that little sum on and how you help women, men maybe too, with this natural alternative instead?
You bet. So when we talk about acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, it's all very much a form of medicine. It goes about it a little bit different in that we look at the body like a garden or a field rather than a machine. And so when you're trying to grow crops in a garden or a field, you got to know, okay, well, what kind of crop we growing? What are the weather patterns like? What's the soil like? What kind of fertilizer are we using? What's our irrigation system like? And so in the body, according to Chinese medicine, we have to have energy and blood circulating freely, smoothly, constantly in order for us to be healthy human beings. The Chinese call that energy qi, tiny little word, but it covers so much. It covers electrical energy, chemical energy, kinetic energy, magnetic fields. It even gets it. We could even talk about gasotransmitters like nitric oxide and sulfur dioxide and how they work in the body. But the idea is that we've got to have this energy circulating freely, smoothly through the body. We get illness when that flow starts to stagnate or stop. And this is where the Botox can cause a problem, is because we need our muscles to move. Our muscles, if you follow like Dr. Jerry Tennant and his ideas about electricity and voltage, the idea is that electricity and voltage, we've got to have an appropriate amount in order to be healthy human beings. And so when our muscles contract, they move electrons. And not only do they move electrons, they move fluid. Well, if you're paralyzing the muscles in your face, they're not moving electrons. They're not moving fluids. So you're not moving energy. You're not moving the fluids. You're creating stagnation. Lymphatic fluids start pooling up. This is also one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of fillers either. They're not Botox, but they create more stagnation in fluid metabolism in the face. And so if things aren't moving, they're pooling up. And just like if we go back to that analogy of irrigation and water, water has to be flowing. If water pools up, it begins to stagnate, and what do you get? Swamp water. Mm-hmm. The same kind of idea can happen in the body, and so your body starts getting swampy. You start building up these toxins, these bacteria, these fungi. All of these things can build up, and then guess what? You've got problems. Mm-hmm. So acupuncture at its core is diagnosing where there is stagnation and then using specific points on the body to re-establish circulation and bring the body back into homeostasis. And we do that with acupuncture, we do that with herbs, we do that with massage therapy, we do that with exercise, chiropractic work. There's a craniosacral therapy. There's a lot of good techniques out there that help the body in this kind of function. Mm-hmm. And so that's, I think that's a very long answer to your short question.
No, it's a perfect answer. No, it's great. When you told me the irrigation thing, I was like, it makes so sense when you come to like the lymphatic system, right? And you know, I think we discredit our bodies a lot for the beautiful, powerful things that they are, you know, and when we put stuff in it that it's not used to, you know, I feel like it's going to react. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this now, but I'm seeing a lot of women that will get like under eye filler. And I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, even though maybe it's not Botox, I do see a lot of people having bad reactions to filler where say they got it under their eye and now it's like kind of hard nodules and they're like dropping. I think it was like one of the Jenners. There's a picture of her recently of how puffy. Yeah, exactly. How puffy these were starting to look. And again, like I'm not here to judge individuals on what that looks like, but I'm just going to say if you were going to go get those things to prevent that and it's making it worse, there's got to be some sort of like body face dysmorphia clicking that of like, is it kind of the same as a body dysmorphia if you have a person, you know, you always think that you're fat but you're super skinny and it's like when you see your face and you're doing all these modifications, is it the same thing where they still see the original face and they're not actually seeing the face that you actually have? Do you know what I mean? Like when people go through body dysmorphia, I feel like there's some people that do that with their face and they're like, I need to fix this. And then it's like their whole face is morphed. Like Zac Efron, like he could say that he hasn't done stuff, but the man does not look aged and changed. He looks completely different, you know, like Simon Cowell, he dissolved all of his stuff as well. And it's like, is there this mental phenomenon that's happening that they're not seeing reality anymore and they're just like addicted to it and addicted to this perfect filter face. And I mean, all the best, but it kills me to know that women want that. And then they're sick in your group, Gretchen. They're talking about, that
Mhm.
they were just not informed. And that's all I really want. It always seems like I
Mhm.
come off like I hate it, but I just hate to see the injuries that come out of it, and that it was preyed upon, that for a lot of people, their vulnerabilities. And
Yeah,
you see that with all plastic
most
surgery.
will echo that. They will echo that they felt inadequately warned, and in some ways they felt preyed upon. And I'm seeing this everywhere, not just from the providers suggesting things to their
Mhm.
patients, but also women who use these products are very quick to say, "Hey, you can fix that with a little Botox," or "Hey, you can do this with a little that this or that." And it's disturbing to me because we have women telling other women, and I suppose men too,
Mhm.
recommending that people inject or put these products into their body when they have these extensive warnings. And
Mhm.
it doesn't sit right with me, and it's really unfortunate. And the injuries are rolling in with fillers as well, and then the hyaluronidase, the filler dissolver. I have been telling people, you need to look at fillers as being permanent. If you decide to go get those, this is a permanent thing. You
Mhm.
cannot go and just assume I'll just use the hyaluronidase enzyme to break it down if I don't like it. No,
Yeah.
that's not how this works. That enzyme, first of all, is not even approved for dermal filling dissolving. This is just a side effect of a drug that they found that is effective to be used in this way. It is not studied, it is not approved. We do not know the long term ramifications. We are seeing that it is melting people's own collagen and tissue. We are seeing that it's affecting the bone. There are a number of injuries because of that dissolver that people are sustaining because they decide they just didn't like the look of the
Yeah.
filler wherever it was placed. And
Yeah.
so it's a big problem.
That's a
It,
big
it's
problem.
frustrating that a product was brought to market without a reversal agent, without a safe and approved reversal agent. So here we go again asking, okay, why? Why?
Why? Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like overuse is going to be a thing too. So I think with me and you, Terry, had talked about this the last time about muscle atrophy,
Mhm.
and how eventually that's going to affect people. Can you walk us through that again and explain like what overuse of Botox could have just on the physical look on your
Certainly.
face?
And Gretch, certainly chime in if you've got additional information. Essentially, Botox, you inject it, it paralyzes the muscle. Well, when you have a paralyzed muscle, that muscle does not fire. If the muscle does not fire, it cannot stay firm, at least over time. And so, if that muscle isn't firm, it's not going to hold the Botox in place. And so, if the Botox isn't being held in place, where's it going to go? So, over time, you've got these flabbier muscles. Well, how is that going to affect you in the long run as well? Things are going to, again, stagnate. They're going to sag. They're going to droop. And so, in the long term, it can age you,
Mhm.
plain and
I feel like
simple.
that's what we're seeing
It's
it.
true.
Like I'm not trying to be that way, but sometimes, like I said, there's that point where things are getting overdone, and you can see the almost the inflammation that the body is kind of, and that's why I won't do it for myself, because like I know my body will just, not for many reasons, but it'll just hate it and it'll just react poorly, and I'm just so terrified of it. And two, like I feel like eventually it's going to lead to a lot of plastic surgery for people if they continue to
It
fill
is.
and modify their faces, because I can't remember who it was that gave the analogy of like a balloon. Was it in our last episode, Terry? Was it you that said the balloon analogy? Someone said the balloon, like you just keep blowing up a balloon. You're just gonna have to keep blowing it up because it's gonna be
Yeah.
like your skin's gonna move to that. When is that the right analogy to say?
It's a great analogy. I've used that
I think so.
analogy. I have.
Okay,
I've
I
used
can't
that
remember
as
where I
well.
got
It's
it.
true. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, and that's where my kind of brain goes. So it kind of worries me a little bit. Like, I've always had thinner lips, and that's fine. And I definitely have my 11. I've had that for a long time. I've worked in the oil field for quite some time. I feel like I earned that 11. And I think my biggest thing about this whole situation that I've really had to learn to kind of take this on to like a more of a personal route, is looking at how popular it is and how much everyone glorifies that other people do it, and then you look at yourself not doing it and you're like, am I not as pretty because I don't have those things? Am I not as pretty because I have wrinkles and I have expressions? And I'm so glad that I'm with a spouse that's like, that is why I love you, please don't ever do that, but it is such a societal pressure to have that perfect face. And Terry, we talked about that before with the Bell's palsy, and I think people out of their kindness are like, oh, just go get Botox and gets fixed. But I feel like sometimes that's very mentally and spiritually damaging to tell someone that
That's
they
what I
just need
think.
to go ingest a toxin in their faces to feel better about themselves. I would really like to challenge people to just tell them to love themselves a little bit more, and that it does not define you as a person if you have that. And if we can start having those conversations to each other, maybe we can start saying it to ourselves on the inside. And I'm not saying we need to walk on eggshells, but I just find it super damaging when people are like, oh, you can just fix that wrinkle with Botox. And it's like, you're asking me to put me at risk of a lot for that. Like, I know
Well,
it's well intentioned, but there's like Botox parties and stuff, and like, let's not age. And it's like, aging is a fucking privilege.
yes.
Sorry.
Well, and
It's
it's just a
that's
band-aid,
disgusting.
and it's not doing the hard work. It's not doing the internal work that is leading a person to want to seek that anyway. And
Yes.
so that's where my mind always goes, is it we need to be doing that internal work for ourselves. And
Mhm.
then when we're complimenting people and we're with people, we need to take the time to figure out what it is I really love about them. It takes a lot more thought to give somebody a well thought out compliment, about their character, than it does to say that they have a pretty face. Now, it's important to compliment people in all ways, but if we would spend more time complimenting people's character attributes, or what they do at work, or anything else other than the physical side, I think that we would be better off as a whole.
Yes.
This is definitely
Yes.
something I preach a lot to my patients,
Mhm.
is the ideas of authenticity and
Mhm.
honoring your authentic self,
Mhm.
and being very aware of self abandonment.
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
again, our culture is very pushy when it comes to the way that you're supposed to look.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so we abandon ourselves to these messages, to these pressures, to the culture. And as we self abandon, well, we lose a part of ourselves.
Mhm.
And then that in turn creates internal struggle in heart and soul. And
Mhm.
that can show up on the face very easily. Every line on your face is written by an
Mhm.
emotion.
Yep.
And so if you're having negative emotions chronically because you're self abandoning and you feel like shit about yourself,
Yep.
uh, those are going to show up. And just because you get the Botox doesn't necessarily mean you get rid of the feelings.
No.
Mhm. Yes,
And
that's so
so then they manifest in other ways.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think too, like you said, and I think we talked about last before, that's what I like about the Chinese medicine is that like a lot of it too is in your gut on the insides. People are so quick to just mask the problem. Like Gretch, you said, a band-aid to, like something that is going to happen anyways, y'all. We're all aging, whether we like it or not, like for multiple reasons. I shared a reel the other day and it was a bunch of older women with their wrinkles and beautiful hair. I don't know if you've
Beautiful.
seen it, Gretch, but it was just so inspiring and wonderful to see. And to your point of just being authentically yourself. And you're just like, what's the difference to me between putting tattoos of your story of who you are on your arm? What's the difference? Like, you can tell I've had a life of smiling and laughing and frustration. And I think we talked about it last before. No one's face is perfectly symmetrical.
Nope.
And why do we want it to be? Everyone's going to start looking the same. There's going to be no individuality or uniqueness when we're all
Mhm.
trying to go to that one look. It's like I love Barbie for some senses, but I don't in others because, all of a sudden she's the stereotype of what beautiful is, and the amount of changing that some of us would have to do to be her is insane. That's expensive, that's exhausting. I'd rather just spend time with a therapist learning to love myself.
And it's
um
unattainable.
it's unattainable, and like
Unattainable.
you have like not even if you have lots of money, and there's so many
Yeah. It
complications with
changes
that.
all
Like
the time.
yeah, like think let's just talk about eyebrows. Okay. The trends of eyebrows,
Yeah.
just every, like, I don't even want to say it's like 10 years. It's almost like every like 6 to 7 years, them eyebrows be changing
Yeah.
place. Like, I remember the super thin ones from the 90s, and then we got a little bit back, and then it was like these thick ass eyebrows, and now it's
Mhm.
like laminated and jewels. Like, there are people have, like, eyebrows have changed so much. And even some people, I remember when they went with the really thin pluck, now have to get like microbladed eyebrows, but then the microblading's going out. So then it's like, well, how are you going to get that tattoo off your face? Like, not shading, but just meaning, like, if you are just keeping up with trends that are authentic to what you feel is yourself, you're continually going to be dumping money into the beauty industry, plastic surgery
Mhm.
industry, like all of it. And what I get frustrated about is people not linking that to their health and understanding that all of those
Exactly.
products, not just Botox, but like beauty products, all of that is all affecting you
Yeah.
and making it truly come out on your face because you're absorbing it. You're putting it in your skin. It's your biggest organ, is it not? So, like, there's so much to it. That's why I love what you do, Terry. And it's like a full
Mhm.
around, it's a whole holistic care. It's not just like, for you. And I'm not just saying just, but like the acupuncture, obviously that's amazing. But at the same time, you're like, what's your lifestyle like? Like, I can do all of this, but if you're going to go home and be angry for the 3 weeks that you don't see me, like, we might have to change some of those things in your life
Yep.
to, because it said, like, your emotions are on your face,
Well,
like,
and you don't lose your baseline. And that's what's so
yeah,
beautiful about what Terry does is he enhances people's authentic self. It's not a product or a band-aid that causes people to lose their baseline in their face. And I
yeah,
think that when you gave the examples of the celebrities who don't even look like themselves anymore, that is what is happening. So
yep,
people can start off with micro talks or baby talks or a little bit of this or that, but it so quickly it doesn't stay there. It goes to that next level, and then 2 years pass by and all of a sudden they don't resemble the person that they were, and I'm not sure that they even remember what their face was to begin with in the first place. So it
yeah.
really is,
It's a mind warp,
it's a mind warp. It is.
right? And
Mhm.
It's
it's like, and I don't want people to be upset. I don't want people to feel shame about it because we
No.
all are wanting to find ways to be the most beautiful. I'm just so tired of people hearing, I don't know why I'm sick, and then finding out it's the Botox or the breast implants or anything that they were sold that they said that was going to make them feel better, made them feel 10 times worse. And I hate that. Sorry, Terry, I cut you off. You
oh,
go
it's
ahead.
okay. Again, Chinese medicine talks a lot about how the outer reflects the inner.
Ah,
Mhm.
yes.
And so, again, we can get into this crazy cycle where, we don't feel good on the inside about ourselves. So we modify the outside. And because we modify the outside, then that ends up creating more changes on the inside. And it's almost like this downward spiral that people get into, almost creating, I don't want to say their own kind of personal hell,
Mhm.
but there is definitely that mental emotional connection there
Yeah.
that
Pattern.
I love Chinese medicine for, in that we can discuss, okay, well, these sorts of feelings that you're having, every organ system in Chinese medicine has an emotion associated with it. And so, if you're constantly feeling anger, well, that associates with the liver and the gallbladder. Well, there's a liver and gallbladder area on the face. It happens to be right here.
Mhm.
And so,
Damn
and so again, if you're constantly feeling angry, well, these muscles will constantly be firing.
Mhm.
But that being said, there's something that needs to happen in order for you to process those emotions well. When you can process your emotions and allow that emotional energy to move and circulate, these lines actually will soften.
Mhm.
I have these wonderful lines. I don't know if I can get close enough to the camera or not, that come down from the corners of my eyes. And these actually showed up during my son's cancer treatment. We call them unshed tear lines. And it's
Mhm.
because I wasn't allowing myself at the time to really, I mean, just sit down and have a good ugly cry.
Yeah.
But when you
That's
do
very
those things for
interesting.
yourself
Yeah.
and really allow your emotions to move and process them in a good way,
Yep.
Mhm.
it all shows up here. And then you don't necessarily need to use the tools to erase those lines.
Mhm. Mhm. That's really beautiful.
It
I'm really
is.
sorry again that you went through that, but that's such a beautiful testament to show what you're going through in life, will show up because again, when you're going through those stresses, I'm sure the last thing on your mind was getting three extremely healthy meals at the time and all of those things. Your environment really does and I think it's crazy that we're just sold that just everything on our face you could just even down to acne, it's like use all of these things. And it's like, well, where is it coming from? It's coming from inside. Why am I reacting this way? My body is giving me a flag for some reason. And I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think a chemical cream, yes, although they're effective sometimes, maybe it'll help in the interim, but it's going to keep showing up. Like I took birth control
Yep.
for acne, but my acne never went away ever. Ever. If anything, it was worse. And it was like, okay, wait, this doesn't make sense. But the doctor's saying it's going to take my acne away. So I just must be a dirty person and I must not be washing my face enough. And it's like, it's so insane what they get you by with your insecurities and fear of, all of these things. And when it comes down to it, I find a lot of things come back to basics when it comes to health, right?
Mhm.
What foods are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Are you regulating your emotions? I feel like most adults don't know how to regulate their emotions as well. And they either store or they project. And that all comes from your energy, your vibe. When someone just walk in a room, you're like, ooh, I could feel this bubble, right? Like,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
that's you're like
Yep.
cheat, like you can feel the bad or good, and that all
It's
starts,
true.
I feel like right from the middle, right? And the thing is that I would love it to see in the future is honesty about what this toxin does
Same.
and honesty about alternative um, ways to take care of yourself. So we've obviously got Chinese medicine and all those things that you do to take care of yourself internally. We've got facial acupuncture. We've got frownies, right?
Mhm.
Those are,
Love them.
like
Muscle
maybe
training.
that's
Love.
not the
I
cutest
use
thing at
it almost
nighttime.
every night.
Yeah, just like have your sexy time and then put your frownies on. Or
Mhm.
maybe your man's into that. Maybe he likes a leather face. I don't know. I'm not judging.
They do look
But
weird.
like, there are other alternatives. Are they going to be as quick
No.
as the other ones?
Mhm.
No. But anything to me in good in life takes time. And we're in a microwave society where everything wants it now and it doesn't matter about risk. For me, it does. I'm old school. I like to cook things on my stove if I can.
Mm.
Maybe air fryer. Microwave's not my favorite. I don't. I love to take time in the process because sometimes you sacrifice with speed, right? So it's
Yeah.
like this could be faster. You're going to be uncomfortable a lot less time because that Botox is going to kick in. But what's that going to look like 20, 30 years down the road? Are you going to be uncomfortable with your face then and not going to be able to do anything about it? You can't take it back, but
Right.
you could always get it later in life, is kind of what I want people to take away from this. Like, can we go back to when we were teenagers and they were doing it in their like 60s and 70s and it was rich, Donatella Versace's of the world? Like, can we go back to that, where maybe you don't have as much to lose later in life, I don't know, but to do it at 20, you're just robbing yourself, in my opinion.
Well,
And
here's what I
there's
can
gua
tell
sha,
you.
there's oils, there's
There's
massage, like
so
cupping.
there's so many methods that work, but I want to tell you every universally, every single person that I know that I have come across that has had these products go south for them universally has said, I wish I would have made a different decision. And so it's really hard to be on the receiving end of that. I'm happy to do it. And I know a lot of our team members, I know Terry does this. I know you, everyone does this for people to be that sounding board when someone's like, yeah, I shouldn't have made that choice. But that is something that is universal across the board. So I would tell people that to think about that. Every person that has had side effects from these products wishes they could go back and not have chosen to use them.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
tells
That
us
the risk
something
wasn't
really
worth.
strong. Yeah.
Yeah, with the reward, right? Where it's
Yep.
like some people are like, like certain Western medicines, of course, like, when you're in a situation, absolutely. But I'm always just like, just make sure you know what the side effects
Yeah.
are and if they're greater. Some of the, remember those commercials? It's like, here to solve your, heart condition, but you're gonna get cancer and you're gonna get, you're not gonna be able to walk and you're gonna be peeing out of your
None of
eyeballs.
it's
Like,
worth it. It's not
yeah,
worth
but you're
it.
not gonna have heartburn. So
Yeah.
cool, and it's like the list of side effects are longer than the ailments that they're trying to help. Like, you have to kind of wonder, is that the best? And I'm not saying that those things shouldn't happen. I would just love to see people try every other alternative until that, like
Mhm.
as late in life as you can, and on top of it, I feel like lymphatic drainage is good for not just your face, like for literally everything. I love my trampoline. I love getting on it every morning. I at least do like 100 little mini hops just to get the body going. Like, especially we sit at the computer all day, you guys. Like, our bodies weren't designed to do what it is doing now, and you really have to have personal accountability to take care of yourself and understand of what's going in your body. And if you're sick and nothing else has changed in your life but the Botox, again, you can't go and test it because it's probably not within that 48 hours that you got it, but you can look around to other people's experiences
Mhm.
and you can kind of, do that experiment for yourself. Like, maybe I stopped doing Botox for a couple years and let's see if I still have these ailments, right? Like, so let's get into a little bit of advice section.
Mhm.
Gretch, if someone, they think that they have had these experiences and these ailments, what should they do besides joining your Facebook group and your Instagram
Mhm.
page?
Yeah, I would tell people to really get in tune with their body and start to not only think about how they're feeling on a daily basis within their whole person. So internally, their inner self, but their, cognitive self and their self-esteem, like just the whole person, and to keep a log of how often they're exercising and eating and drinking and the substances they're using, to have something tangible that they can go back to. Because again, connecting the dots with this toxin, when in some people it poisons the body really slowly, it's like cutting down a tree. The first few whacks don't do anything, but then all of a sudden it's timber and the whole tree falls down. That's what we're seeing happen to people. And so just to have that information is really, really helpful. I would also tell people to be careful where they're getting their advice from, to look at things, with those critical thinking skills. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who like to hop on to awareness causes or different kinds of things in order to ultimately sell a different product or a different thing, whether that be, we see this often with multi-level marketing companies, or, whatever the service may be. And we've seen this happen with our group members also, who are sick and who have gotten better, but yet this seeking behavior that they have to still maybe try beauty things, or to maybe detox the toxin, which can't be done, but people tell them it can be. They get sold on these things from people who maybe have good intentions, but the products maybe aren't the safest, or we just don't know. Go then and use them and then become really sick again. And that's something that's unique to iatrogenic botulism poisoning, is because of the biological activity of this toxin, and it stays in the body for an unspecified length of time. We don't know if it ever leaves the body. In fact, there's more research showing that it's permanent than that it goes away, right? So because of that fact, people will use things that will elicit an immune response or have other toxins in them or ingredients that aren't regulated. We see this a lot in the green beauty world, right?
Mhm.
And it's not good. It's not regulated. We need to understand it's still not regulated. Our people will use those things and then they get really sick.
And I've
And
seen that in
so
comments,
yep.
unsolicited advice, kind of, where it's like, I know you're trying to do right. And someone will be like, I don't even know if it's like, there was like something about copper, and someone's like, yeah, I don't know if that's the right thing, but someone was like, yeah, do it. And then one of you guys was like, nope, nope, please do not. Like, please refer to this guide that we have. Like, maybe
Yes.
that worked for one person, but that's not anecdotal. And most people have it this way. And I've seen that, so for me, I'm always like, please go to Never Tox, please go to her website, go look at, send them to the experts, to the people that have the research and the knowledge. It's all good that you want to share and help
Mhm.
people, but I think it's better to lead them to the right people and the right people to answer those questions, instead of you just kind of reading it and taking an assumption of what you got from that information and relaying it, where it's like an expert like yourself has been seeing all of it. You can speak to it a lot easier than me being like, well, I think it was this, that she was, it copper that she said was good or bad, I can't quite remember, but and it's
We
like, no,
have the
no, just go direct
patterns.
to the right person.
Yeah, and we have a history of patterns in people. So not only do we have, the research and the studies and those kinds of things, but what's unique to our group is that we have nearly a decade of anecdotal evidence from
Mhm.
people where we have tracked patterns, and what people are using. So we have a really clear idea of what is safe for people to use when they've been poisoned by Botox and what isn't safe. And here's one thing I love about Terry is very early on when we connected, I talked with him about how acupuncture is really helpful for our people, but it
Mhm.
has to be used a little bit down line. So I know Terry now, when he gets a new client in there, he talks with them. He says, have you used Botox? And when was it that you used Botox? Because he knows that he will have to focus on different things until that time period is up. Because in the beginning, it just wouldn't be safe for him to do certain procedures. And so
Is that
that's
'cause
why
it
I
would
love you,
spread?
Terry. I wish everyone did that. Yeah.
And is that
But
because you could spread it around? Is that the
yeah,
idea?
Yep.
we're seeing it being spread around. Yeah, and there's probably some other things that we suspect are happening, but we're a little unsure as well. There's a lot of really scary
It's the
things happening.
flags.
Here's a good one. For instance, we had a gal that was getting better. She seemed to be on the healing path. She had had over 30 symptoms at one time, and she was down to just a handful, and had at least a month or so, say, of feeling quite good. She went in to have her hair done, had her hair colored and washed, and her scalp massaged. And just that very action of this, the chemicals and things that were on her hair and this massage physically caused her to have a very, very intense botulism relapse. And we don't know exactly what occurred there, but we know something happened. And it
Something.
was probably a perfect storm, honestly, between the chemicals and the hair dyes and these kinds of things, plus the physical manipulation and the heat and all of it together. Probably wasn't any one thing, but that stuff
Mm-mm.
is happening, and it's
Yep.
scary.
Yeah, and that's my argument about like anything that's quote unquote FDA approved. I'm like, but how do you take every single person's personalized makeup?
Mhm.
Everyone has a different chemical reaction in their body to certain things, right? Like
Yes.
how do you then say it's safe when you don't know what their toxic overload has been? You don't know what they've had. Like, and isn't it true that that stuff doesn't leave your body? Like, don't they say it gets metabolized, but it like for the most
There,
part it
so
doesn't
I and
seem
th-
like it
I
does?
have asked many professionals when they go and they quote that it's metabolized outside of the body within 3 days or whatever. I've heard 3 days, I've heard a week, to say, okay, you believe that? Great, show me the studies. And I have had a
Yeah.
few providers provide, they give me the study. Every time I go back into that study and I look at the trail of studies in support of that, it usually doesn't prove that at all. And in fact, if you look at the language and the way that it's written really carefully, it uses terminology like it may be metabolized, or it is assumed that it's this or that,
Most
where
likely.
it's just not anything proven. And then if
Mm-mm.
you actually look at the permanence of it in the body with the original founders of this toxin, there's a researcher by the name of Eric Johnson who was one of the founding fathers of the protein isolation. He worked directly with Alan Scott and all these big name people, and you go and look at what they put out, and it says very clearly here that botulinum toxin has an extraordinary persistence in the body. And in fact, it has been shown that it actually behaves more like, say, a dormant virus does in the body, like a varicella zoster virus or these kinds of things. And so that is actually more
Terrifying.
accurate.
Yeah, so then it's like anything going forward, you don't really know what could react to that if that's just like floating around in your body and then all of a sudden maybe you have something one day or take some medication like isn't that hypothetically could react all
Well,
over again?
yes. And that's why that black box warning, I always tell people get into that warning and look at it, because if it's
Mhm.
printed there, it means something. And
Yep.
providers are not doing this enough. So, for example, there's a whole section in there that talks about having a surgery, okay, which is basically because of the use of anesthetics. So, the
Mhm.
use of anesthetics affect the central nervous system, they affect the neuromuscular junction, and they actually can affect the cholinergic system as well. And so that is what Botox does too. And so when we get these things combined, this is where we see adverse events occur. So
Yep.
people's things that they have, pre-existing things or surgeries or medications they take or conditions going into having Botox also play a role in whether
Yep.
or not their body's going to tolerate it.
Yeah.
So there's just so many factors.
That's why I don't understand when someone can say it's safe and effective. I'm like, but for who?
But for
Like,
who?
you were in your
Yeah.
specific, and like we know, and I'm not trying to be this way, and I'm not a feminist, but back in the day, a lot of medications were on men, and it's like, well, that's going to affect men a lot differently than women. Like, obviously not birth control, but like we're so different that I just really hate these like safe and effective claims. Like, no, tell me more. What are people's experiences? And I don't care if a study is telling me that. Tell me what people around me, because the people around me are more likely to be like me in the same environment, in the same physical makeup, and the same location. How they're reacting, I feel like is going to be more in tune to how I would react versus what a piece of paper that was handpicked or not finished or, fancy words
And
that
do you want to know
stupid
what I
hospital
say,
told me.
Brandy? I say
Yes.
everybody reacts.
Yeah,
Or I
I
will
think so
say
too.
it's a risk for everybody.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
because of what the research shows, and Terry has echoed this, we know that the toxin destroys the nerve every single time. It damages the nerves. We know this blockade of acetylcholine is irreversible. So in a person, in an organism, whether it be, waterfowl, a mammal, a human, okay, it is that mechanism is universal. It is causing that damage
Yeah.
on the cellular level across the board every single time. And
Mhm.
so there is no amount of money that someone could give me, $100 million. If someone had a check right here, Gretch, take this and go have Botox, I would say, not on your life. Goodbye.
No.
Like I
Yeah.
would never, because the writing is on the wall. I can see it in print in black and white that this is universal. This mechanism in the body, and that's what makes it very, very dangerous.
Yeah. And it makes a shit ton of money, and that's why it's still out there,
I
because I
believe
feel
in
like
my
it does.
lifetime. I believe in my
You
lifetime
think you'll
and
see
the
it?
stuff that's going on with Public Citizen right now. Are you guys aware of that with the petition?
No.
The Public
No.
Citizen is a focus group, huge. I mean, huge group. They are responsible for many of the trials against manufacturer companies and regulating bodies for negligence in the pharmaceutical industry. They are responsible for the original black box warning label that happened in 2009 for botulinum toxin A products. They just released a petition to hold the FDA accountable for allowing negligence in the botulinum toxin black box warning labels, stating that the risk of botulism is not clear enough. The risk of botulism appears on the medication guide, which is at the very end of the 54-page black box warning label. So it's like page 53 and 54. A lot of people don't get that, and a lot of providers will just give the black box warning, but they won't also include the medication guide for their patients. And so their argument is that, we have all of this whole trail of botulism illness happening in people. It needs to be present in the warning label. Also, people have a right to know that this is happening at recommended doses
Mhm.
for recommended indications, and it's happening with summative, which I talked about, the summation effect, summative uses. So they're wanting that label to be updated. And the FDA right now has 1 year to respond, or Public Citizen will take them to court. It will be turned
Oh,
into a massive litigation. I believe in my lifetime that botulinum toxin A will either have serious, serious warnings associated with it, even more serious, like, because the black box warning label right now is not enough,
yeah.
even more, or it's going to be
Yeah.
cut because
Yeah.
the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, I think people are getting tired of it too. I think
Mm-hmm.
also, like, I'm not trying to be this way, but like inflation, people can't really necessarily afford all these things too right now, right? Those are going to be
Right.
the first
First
services
things
that
to
people are
go.
going to
Yep.
have to cut to be able to just live their lives, right? Like, it's one thing I was like, I don't know how you bitches fucking afford this. This is insane. Like, I could barely
Oh,
afford
it's
my
like a
groceries in
thousand dollars a
Canada.
pop. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then
Three
you
times a
see,
month.
and what gets me is like get 3 units for free, and like I just will be like, oh, anyways, whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I agree. The awareness is coming out more and more. I see more and more people embracing their natural beauty.
Mhm.
And
Thank God for that.
Thank God for
yeah, and
that. I agree.
I'm here for it. And I hope that everyone knows that when I speak about this, I just want people to know, because it really hurts to read all of these stories that go on the Never Tox page, Facebook page. It was when I had Facebook again. I was seeing every couple of days there's just massive stories, and it just like the Nicole BII group grew from like, a couple thousand people to hundreds of thousands of people. This group is growing, and I don't know if it's because people are becoming more aware, people are getting sicker, people are using it more. I don't know if it's a combination of all of it, but it is growing. And I think that has to do with people like us just being okay with talking about it, and
Mhm.
you want to do it, I'm really for anybody doing whatever. I'm just a chicken shit. I'm not putting that in my body because I just will be one of those people that do not react or do react, sorry. And I think a lot of people get it and they look at their faces and they don't recognize themselves anymore. And I'm so terrified of getting to that place. And I just started loving, what I see in the mirror. And I don't want to take that away from myself personally. So for me, I just practice self-love and stare at yourself in the mirror if you have to. Like, it's so crazy how some people can't even look at themselves in the mirror.
It's true.
And you just really have to start with self-love, and you have to
Yep.
look inside. And like you said, Terry, all those emotions that you have that are inside, how are they affecting your face and your energy and how you're showing up? If it's all negative, if you're just in that rut, we've all been there, but that's gonna show in so many different areas of your life. So you could even help prevent aging, which I fucking hate saying that title because I don't, but like for lack of better understanding, take care of yourself, the core, the basics. Reach out to healers like Terry,
What?
reach out to researchers like Gretch. If they piss you off, if this triggered you, good, ask some questions. Like, I mean that with love, but like, and again, if you hear all of this and you're like, it's not going to be me and I'm going to keep going with it, go for it. But if something happens, I want you to put a pin in this conversation and come back to it when your doctors tell you they don't know what's wrong with you. No, all tests are inconclusive. We don't know because, again, you don't know when that's going to hit. You could have little, and 10 years later of those little every couple of years. Some people are like, oh, I just get it every couple of years. But like you said, Gretch, summation of that, right? That there's reason to believe that you keep getting it. It's not leaving your body. There's levels. You're going to hit that level whether you do it all in one session or you're doing it over time, right? So it's just being informed. And I just want to challenge people to start loving themselves. Look in the mirror without makeup. Your worst self, your morning troll self. Don't even brush your teeth. Just tell yourself, Is there any suggestions you guys have for self-love and accepting, since we all have commented that we all have unsymmetrical faces and we all have learned to self-love?
I tell my patients, well, my personal belief is that we are all divinely created beings.
Mhm.
You are a reflection of the divine God. And so, as my grandmother used to tell me, God don't make no junk.
I love that.
you know,
I love it.
we're here in this physical reality for a reason. You have worth. And sometimes that's hard for us to feel. And sometimes we have to go through some hard things in order for us to realize those things. But starting out with, valuing yourself as that divine being. And okay, well, would I really treat another divine being the same way? I mean, or even, you could even look at your pets. It's like, I speak to my dogs so lovingly. Oh, why not do that with myself?
Yourself.
You
Mhm.
know?
And that's where you start. It seems so small. And I remember I used to kind of not make fun of people, but be like, oh, everyone that use these affirmations. But it's true.
It's true.
And the minute you start understanding how bad your self talk is, you're like, okay, no wonder why I can't look at myself in the mirror, And it's all starts within. And eating properly, sleeping properly, de stressing, getting to know who you are. What does it mean to be authentic to yourself? What are your morals? What are your values? I don't think we sit there and look at those things as much. We're just go, go, go in life and we're getting goals and we're chasing dreams. But what is that at our core? What are our values? Are we being authentic to those morals and values? Are we showing up in those ways? I just wonder if we spent more time thinking about those things, self-assessing, healing, rather than what I'm wearing or what my hair looks like, or and I'm guilty of all of it. I'm not,
Yep.
Same.
but if we did that, what would the world look like, right? I often think that. And so I'm always trying to operate in other ways, being like, is this what I'm doing helping anybody? Is this helping myself? Like, what are my intentions with what am I doing? Am I doing this for outside validation? Am I doing this for myself? Like, to me, it's like there's a point in your life where you have to just stop running and just stop, plant your feet in the ground and be like, what is it that I'm doing? Because you can go 10 years of doing this like little habit that you don't think it's a big deal. And now all of a sudden, like, you can't get out of that rut, or you can't get out of that stupid story you've told yourself that you're not good enough, you're not beautiful, You have to take responsibility and stop where you are and be like, no, we're not doing this anymore. and I'm going to start self-assessing, even just being aware that you have negative thoughts. Your
Yes.
brain starts being like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I look like shit. No, girl, you don't. You look like fire. And then maybe the next time you're just like, this isn't my favorite. But you start just calling it out, just stopping and grounding yourself for a second. Where am I? Here,
There's
here,
there's a
here.
great book out there by Dr. Shad Helmstetter called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself.
Ooh, cool.
And he's a doc who studies brain neuroplasticity.
Cool.
And the basic idea in the book is that your brain's like a computer. You give it data, it hardwires that data. So if you're telling yourself, yeah, you're ugly, you're stupid, or whatever, you're programming your
Correct.
brain to make that a reality. Your brain will start finding ways to make what you tell it
Believe
a
that.
reality.
And
And so if
validate
you
it too.
start talking to yourself in a way that's positive, you're hardwiring your brain to start making those things a reality.
And
Amazing.
awareness to it, right? Like I'll be like, oh, I wish I wouldn't do this. And like even just thinking about it, I'll start to operate like, oh, I really should stop wasting money on little things. And then when I go to do something, I'm like, and I might still do it, but that thought's now there that never was there. And then you just practice that muscle and you practice that thought and you practice and you just start small. Maybe it is sitting there and just sitting and listening to a guided meditation for 5 minutes of positive affirmations. Doing that alone changes your whole world because isn't your brain now being like, okay, I'm going to go find reasons, right? Like it's always
Yep.
searching for validation. So if you're telling yourself you're a piece of shit, it's going to recall everything in your life that's going
Mhm.
to validate that you're a piece of shit. And those are going to keep replaying in your mind to validate the idea that your brain's comfortable in that. But it's like, oh, I'm maybe not. And then your brain's going to start searching for other ways of proving that you're not and validating that feeling as well, whether that's good or bad, right? And recalling on experiences or looking around. And so immediately, if you just kind of stop that, it starts slowly, but then it just trickles down. And then you start searching for other ways of self improvement. Like, man, this feels really good. I don't hate myself every time I look in the mirror, whether that's because you physically did something to change yourself by going to the gym and you're just like, oh yeah, look at those biceps, like,
Mhm.
but you did that for yourself and it all takes practice, right? But I think people, like I said, we're in a microwave society. So it's like, do a bunch of squats and eat protein for the next 10 years or go get a BBL. Well, the BBL will give me that right away, but that's not, then you're putting yourselves at risk. And again, it's where it's sometimes you just have to go through the uncomfortable and then that's not uncomfortable anymore. And then you didn't have to take the risk, right? So
Right.
maybe just go through a couple years without Botox and seeing your face. And maybe over time, you just won't give a shit about it. I used to dye my hair. First full year, no hair dye. It's almost grown all the way out. And I'm sure there's grays coming in. Is that a huge toxic load compared to a lot of other things? No, but it was just something I'm like, why do I keep doing this? Like, do I need to, can I go a whole year without dyeing my hair and see what happens? And it didn't dye. It's always my favorite, but at the same time, and now I'm just like, I don't know if I'll ever go back. Maybe, but right now I'm just like, no, that's okay. And that all started from being like, maybe this is one toxin in my life that I could take out and learn to just accept about myself. Let's give that a try. And then I gave it a try and I'm like, okay, this isn't terrible. And I can always go back to dyeing my hair, but let's just try it and be a little bit uncomfortable. Like, okay, someone's going to comment a few grays. That's fine. You're 37. You're okay. You're allowed to,
And
you
what
know?
you are allowed, and you know what else is that those who love you, and I say this a lot to people, your inner circle, your spouse or your partner, perhaps your children, your best friends, even your fur babies, they love
Yes.
you. They love everything about you. I promise you, they are not paying attention to a few grays in your hair, the lines on your face, this or that, because that's the last thing that they think about you. They love you for who you are.
Mhm.
Can you imagine if we just each individually loved ourselves the same way that others love us or that others see us? That would be amazing.
We
And
bankrupt a lot of
so I
industries,
we would bankrupt a lot of industries. So
right?
I
And
think that's important.
yeah, and I think too, what a takeaway is whether you get it, whether you don't, whether you offer it or whether you're not, just making sure that you're aware, you have informed consent, and your intention is in the right place, right? Making sure, like you said, if you're doing this for service because you really think that's helping people and it is, I'm not going to argue that's not my life, but just make sure that you're informing everyone or if someone comes to you and is like, hey, I got this injury, I think this happened. Don't discredit them, don't gaslight them, send them to the right place, send them to Gretch, if you guys want to know more about alternatives and Terry's world, like more than happy to walk you through what that means, what that looks like. You guys could go back and watch the episode where we dove even deeper into Chinese medicine and acupuncture and the alternatives of that. But for me, and I know you guys, it's just about being informed. We respect everyone for what they want to do. I can understand and relate that I have, body dysmorphia, face dysmorphia. It's something that to this day, even though I've made the choice of being tox free, don't think that I don't think about it or just be like, okay, Brandy, are you being silly? Like, are you being too crunchy here? Like, but again, it's being authentic to my morals and values, and how I want to show up is that I want women to feel like they don't have to do that to be beautiful. And the only way that I can help encourage that message is by living and breathing that authentically and living in it, even though sometimes it's the most fucking uncomfortable because I'm on here, I'm on social media. But I get up in the morning and you see my face. Like, I don't even wipe the makeup off my face because that's real life. And I don't want people to feel like, when I was younger, this is going to sound so weird, but when I was younger, like, I felt there was a couple girls that were upset with me because I was pretty, and that made them hate me. And so then I didn't want anybody to look at my looks because it was making other people feel bad. That is absolutely the last thing I want to do in my presence, is make someone feel bad about themselves. So I really, really want to just show up 100% of myself and let people know it is okay. And that you guys love me for being the fun, energetic Disney character that I am. And it wouldn't be that if I didn't have this, right? So just be aware that you're doing it for the right reasons and not for somebody else or standard. People bitch about the patriarchy, but you're funding it, so you can't really hate what you fund in a way. It's kind of a weird conundrum there, like explant therapists that implant. I'm like, you just have a revolving door there, don't you? Like, here you can get fillers, but here's a dissolver. It's like, how about just none of this? And we don't need this. Like, but people are going to do what they're going to do. So thank you guys so much. This was an amazing conversation. Did we miss anything? Gretch, is there anything that you want through your advocacy that we missed on that you want to touch on before we end today?
If I could just spend 2 minutes, and I'll make it really quick, I promise. But I promised Kels. Okay, Kels is my research partner. We do everything together. We talk every single day and have for many years. But there was one thing that she wanted me to touch on. And so I don't want to leave without doing it. And I don't mean to backtrack in any way, but I just
No.
want people who think that they're suffering, or for people who are treated with botulinum toxin and they experience side effects right away, to do not delay treatment. Go to the emergency room and tell them, I think that I have botulism and these are the symptoms that I'm experiencing. I want people to know that although the symptoms people have don't line up perfectly with what the black box warning label may state, for example, it will state someone with drooping eyelids, for instance, maybe has botulism, but a person might actually experience tunnel vision instead, or they might have their cheek droop instead. To just have this awareness that botulism doesn't always present the same in every single person. And so I need people to know that, because we are having, unfortunately, too many people delaying treatment or delaying maybe the administration of getting antitoxin that should have it and that need it. And to advocate for yourself. If you know something's wrong in your body, you tell the emergency room doctor there is. Get the highest person there that you can find. And all along the way, if you need the support of our team behind you, sending you documentation, giving you articles showing this can happen, whatever that looks like, that's what we do. We will do it day or night for people, because timeliness with treatment is so crucial. And I just want people to know that.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Thank you for that. Because I think a lot
Mhm.
of people are like, and that's what awareness brings, right? Is like having these in your back pocket to being like, okay, this panic attack has lasted a little bit longer than a normal one. Like, you know what I mean? And that's the scary
Mhm.
part of some of these ailments. Like you said to your point earlier, Terry, is like some people just, I'm a busy mom. I'm stressed out at work. Attribute it to every life things when it's maybe, but maybe there's a piece of something that you put in your body as well that's heightening. Maybe
Yep.
your stress was here, but then you
Yep.
got Botox and now it's taking your stress up to here because now your body is fighting this literal toxin in you and trying to work through that. It's now taking its energy somewhere else. So if there is something else circulating, it would make sense that that would then take over your immune system and make you sick. So that's a very good point. And always, guys, make sure, like I said, I will always just direct everyone to this team, the Never Tox Team. They have a website, everything, Instagram, Facebook, it's all there. Yourself, Terry, was there anything else you'd like to add about Botox and alternative measures to looking fresh?
You know, my idea is simple. Botox is like McDonald's. Holistic medicine is like going to Whole Foods Market. So one's going to, be super easy, simple, and give you that short-term effect. The other one is going to nourish you in the long run. You get to choose which one you want. You have the freedom, you have the agency. Choose wisely.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And just, yeah, like I said, make sure you're informed. And I think we informed everyone on this episode what exactly Botox can do. And as always, guys, if you have questions, please reach out. You guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Make sure to give them a follow. Actually, let's just quickly handles. Gretch, your handle for
On
Instagram?
Instagram, it's at Never Tox. Our website is toxsafety.com, and there you can find links to join the support group, to a number of different resources, probably more than you ever wanted to know about botulinum toxin. And then we're on YouTube as well, and that's also at Never Tox.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know about the YouTube. Amazing. And then Terry, yourself, where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. It's at Foxhaven Acu. That's ACU. My website is Foxhaven Aesthetics. That's with the British spelling of aesthetics, so AES. Or you just Google Terry Fox acupuncture.
Yeah.
And look for the guy with the mustache. I'll come up.
Yeah, if you're in Canada, make sure you put the acupuncture because, could be pages and pages until you get
Yes.
to this one. It was my funnest thing. I was like, yeah, I have an interview with Terry Fox. What? Like, he's just as cool, but just a different avenue. But thank you guys so much. Make sure you go follow these guys. And until next time, bye. Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please give me a follow at the Be Real Babe podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Pinterest. You can also find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Until next time, guys, bye.